Canada, of course, met with the media match day -1, and there was a surprise guest joining Jesse Marsch up on the podium. It was Alphonso Davies. Here is Jesse Marsch now on Alphonso's recovery and what he could bring back to the squad.
You know, when Alphonso had mentioned that he wanted to bring a personal trainer to help in his rehabilitation, I was fully supportive of it, and I think it's really important, especially when you're the level of athlete that Alphonso is, having somebody who knows specifically what the demands of your body are, and I think he's been a huge help to Alphonso, and we see him now in great form and great fitness, so I think he's more than ready for tomorrow. He's a big X factor for us because he's such a big talent. He's very explosive in transition moments. He's also a good footballer, so the things that we can do, whether, and again, we've talked about using him from the left back position, which I've done more primarily with him, but then maybe also using him in the midfield, and even when we use him at left back, to really make sure that we're using him in an attacking manner so that we get the most out of him defensively and attacking wise. So there's a lot of dynamic qualities that he brings to the team that make us even better. But even more so, what I've said to him is the effect that he will have on the team being on the pitch, the belief they have in him, the belief he has in himself, I think changes the possibility of what the potential of our team is and what we can do in this tournament. So the whole idea was, can we get stronger as the tournament goes on? And as the opponents start to get tougher and tougher and the moments get bigger and bigger, how can we have our best players available, and how can we now be ready to perform at our best? And that's where we are right now.
Joining us from Manhattan Beach is Christian Jack, live on location, powered by General Mills. KJ, on the beach right now, or at least in the vicinity. Earlier today, he was in the room for that press conference, KJ. We were all a bit surprised to see Alphonso Davies as one of the player representatives. The mood around the room, from what you heard from those two gentlemen, what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway here from Los Angeles today was that the pieces started to come together around this puzzle. You know, it's been a puzzling time for Canadian fans around the availability of Alphonso Davies, their captain, around the decoys by their head coach, Jesse Marsch, and often understanding whether there's clarity or a lack thereof. Today, I think we started to see that clarity was coming together, and I think there was no more hiding. And look, we'll find out more in the truth in the last 32 game if he does end up playing, but I think it was pretty clear now we've come through the group stages that a lot of the things that we've reported on this station for some time were actually the way that it was going to be. You know, Alphonso Davies said we've had a pretty, plan that we've executed pretty perfectly ever since we talked about it back before the squad was announced. Jesse Marsch said today that there was never really going to be a chance. It was very unlikely to see him playing in that group stages. He then went on to say afterwards that, he has then hit those medical thresholds that he hadn't hit just 4 days earlier. So the biggest takeaway for me that was, unless we're all being duped by Jesse Marsch, is that it looks like Alphonso Davies will return to the pitch and the stadium where it all ended for him, 462 days ago for Canada in the Nations League, and he did speak a little bit about that as well. So for me, Amy, I think there's just a general excitement. I don't think it was a time anymore for anybody kind of deceiving anybody. I think Canadian fans read that press conference and watched it and thought, he's going to play at some point in the game tomorrow, and we'll find out when that is.
Yeah, excitement for sure. I think that's what is to be emphasized here. But to your point about clarity, I think on the inside, and we'll never really know, but I think there was never a doubt about what the plan was. Things may shift slightly, but it was the caginess and the gamesmanship to the outside world, whether that was media, pundits, fans. I think on the inside, there's always been a course that they've stayed on and they've had to adapt in discussions with the medical team. But to know now that they have a player, dynamic was a word that Jesse Marsch used. I mean, it's used to describe this team's style of play, but it epitomizes Alphonso Davies, and he is a game changer for this team. So if they can drop him in for 20 minutes, it will give everybody, as you alluded to, a collective lift. So I think just to have that awaiting them tomorrow when they must bring their very best, to know that they have that waiting in the wings could be transformative for this team.
I think behind the scenes as well, I think that coaching staff had some confidence about this team, thinking we're getting out of this group stage. We've got enough quality here. We've got good players. We're at home. And if we can rest Alphonso Davies through this group stage, get through, Well, the round of 32 is when we're going to see him. Now, don't get me wrong. I said it's important that we see him in the group stage to see how he handles himself. But if he's met his targets and he's ready to go, then I expect to see Alphonso Davies at least 20, 30 minutes in this game against South Africa, because the importance that of him being there, what he brings to this team, we need him. And it's important that everybody gets to see Alphonso Davies because he is key to this team as well.
Well, you know, he is absolutely champing at the bit to get back onto the pitch. It's been since March of last year since we have seen Davies play for his country. We've heard from his coach on what this recovery has been like, the coordination with Bayern Munich, but about the captain himself in his own words on the recovery and how hard it's been to watch from the touchline.
At the beginning of the injury, I think Canada and Bayern, we sat down together. We made a plan of how it's going to look over the next few weeks during the tournament, and I think we're executing that perfectly. There's only been good communication from both sides and open communication. Obviously, it was painful. The only thing you want to do is play football. That's what I'm really passionate about, and I think the first game, watching it, I was eager to get on the pitch. Second game, even more so, and obviously the third game, I went to him before the game. I asked him do you think I can get a couple minutes? Obviously, he could have said, yeah, we just throw you in there, but obviously he cares about me and the team and as human beings as well. So he sat me down and said, listen, you haven't gone through your progressions to get back on the pitch and in game. So I thought about it and I said he's right. It's kind of hard to hear, but yet again, I was on the sidelines. Obviously, anything I want to do is to play football and to help contribute on the pitch, and also off the pitch. But it was hard to watch those 3 games. But I fought through it for sure. I think there's no really challenge. I think it's just obviously we play sports. Injuries are bound to happen. And yet again, you always have these little tweaks and stuff. And I think the best thing you can do is, obviously go in the gym and, try to fix, or do, extra work in the gym or stuff like this. But for me, especially when you have 3 hamstrings injury back to back, definitely your confidence starts going a bit. You start overthinking, whether I should push or do something that's gonna, trigger it. But yet again, if you start thinking like that, then it's bound to happen. If you just go on the pitch and play with a free head, then who knows?
Well, one of the great shames of this World Cup is that we will not have seen the superstar face of the Canadian men's national team play in Canada. But KJ, when we think about legacy, for a player who's seemingly ready to come back in and play whatever part he's able to in potentially winning a first ever knockout round match, what that could do for his story, for his teammates' story, for this sport in our country, how much of an impact do you think he can realistically have? We don't know how many minutes he's cleared for and how Jesse Marsch plans on using him, but just to have him back and available in earnest for a change, what could that mean for this team?
Well, there was an interesting moment in the press conference where a U.S. reporter asked Jesse Marsch about the availability of Alphonso Davies. At one point, he said, "Can he start?" And Alphonso Davies just laughed and said, "Start." And no one was really looking at him. It was almost like a scene out of a sitcom where this guy in the quiet corner just said that one word and everyone started howling. And amongst the press, we had kind of got our answer to the fact that no, he's not going to start. But the fact that he's going to be involved at all, I think, is special, and I think it's needed. It not only lifts the players, it lifts the Canadian national team on the verge of a historic moment here. Let's be honest, they've got a lot of work to be done here, and we're going to get to that later. But in many ways, if this goes the right way and these scenes and these images are seen for decades upon decades, then it feels right that Alphonso Davies needs to be in the middle of that and can at some point participate on the field and make a contribution. I expect him to get on the field late in the game. Obviously, it's going to be scenario based. There's been some discussion here about what if the game is tied and they've got extra time? Does he have to see whether he's got the legs in him to do that? Because if you put him on in the 70th or 65th, for example, in a scoreless tie, then also all of a sudden you're looking at him playing an hour. So I think they're going to have to be managing that. But all in all, it just feels like it's the right time for Alphonso Davies to come in. And speaking to the players, there is a lift, undoubtedly. You know, Alphonso Davies is the captain, and as Jesse Marsh has said, he's called him the best player. This team has proven since March of 2025, in many ways, a lot of areas where they didn't really need him. But this is a World Cup, and they need him, and they're going to get him back at the right time.
Jimmy, is the timing right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, this is the biggest game in the history of this organization, and to have Alphonso Davies, arguably the best Canadian player ever, who's won Champions Leagues, who's won Bundesligas, captain of Canada, you know, this is just another bit of history for Alphonso Davies. And if we can get him on that pitch and he can contribute and get us success and get us to that round of 16, his legacy is just going to go even higher than what it already is.
Amy, you agree?
Yes, I do agree. And I don't want to be that person because I do feel like I'm a perennial glass half full type of person, and the timing is right to have Alphonso Davies back. But just to hear him talk about his own journey to recovery, there's also the mental piece, the psychological piece. And to be in that camp, you know, since the friendly started, meeting the team out in Edmonton, there's been a lot of demands put on him to play that role when he's not an active participant on the pitch. And I've been there, not necessarily as captain of the women's side, but I've been there playing a prominent role and been injured and coming back and trying to find your way, figure out how to lead in a different capacity. So whether he gets 20 minutes or he gets 25 minutes or 10 minutes and he contributes to extra time if this game gets to that point and he has to step up and take a penalty shot, I think that there's a lot of pressure we're putting on him now, and we maybe have to measure our expectations a little bit. We just think about performance, and I think he will ultimately lend so much to this team, but I also think we give him a little bit of grace because he's been put in a difficult position as the face and as the best player on this team.
Well, an international sport, football no exception, the Olympics as well, probably a word you hear in this space more than any other space is quadrennial. You build in these 4-year cycles for this big moment where the stakes couldn't be higher. That's tomorrow. There is no second chances. This is it. This is what the country, the sport has been building towards. And Jesse Marsh was asked if his players are ready to meet the moment, how committed this group is heading into the knockouts.
However you want to talk about the knockout phase and the preparation for it and what our team is ready and or what our team is about is what you see in the Canadian national team is a group that is more committed to each other than just about any team I've ever been a part of. And I think on match day, what they always try to represent is that togetherness, that commitment they have to each other, and that I don't think in all our time together, there's been a better representation of that. At first, I thought Venezuela was a perfect representation, and then you saw the Qatar match, right? You saw a team that played with such quality, with such commitment, with incredible talent. And then when that happened to Ismail Kone, you also saw the empathy and the togetherness and the love that they have for each other. And then still to finish the match the way we did, you saw the concentration and discipline, an idea of everything that I think represents what those group of players are and who they are at the highest level and in the most positive light possible. And so my job as a coach, I think, is always to try to just provide a platform for them to show that, to showcase who they are, what they are. And in a moment like this, that's what I think will be our X factor, is the character and togetherness of the group.
As is the life of a sports reporter, KJ has probably seen Jesse Marsh in this Canadian men's national team more than his family in the last few weeks leading up to this tournament, been embedded with the group. So there's no one better to ask than you, KJ. How ready is Canada for tomorrow?
Well, I feel like they are, and I think everything that Jesse says there is undoubtedly correct. No one's going to counter his points there because it's what they've been building towards, you know, in the 2+ years of the Jesse Marsh tenure. I will just say it's a World Cup knockout game, and there's a lot of pressure on this team. You know, I've only been in this country for the best part of 12 hours, but everybody you speak to is talking about Canada and the opportunity they've got to get through to the next round. They are massive favorites in the eyes of anyone who wants to talk football here in Los Angeles. Massive. Nobody's given anybody else a chance but them. So, and there's a few South African fans around here too, by the way, who feel like they're playing with house money. So I get everything that he is saying. Of course, I do believe that they are ready for this moment. But you got to go out there and deliver, and ultimately they've been given a real opportunity here. The group stages are just wrapping up, as we've talked about in this show already. You look at this, boy, oh boy, you finish at second in a World Cup group and you get South Africa. No disrespect to the opponents, but we're allowed to say this. This is a gift. And, you look at some other groups, Japan, they got Brazil. You think about that right away. You look at, the fact that there's other countries there finishing second, like Morocco, and they get the Dutch. So there's opportunities there that will be very, very difficult in the future that Canada may not get in a lifetime with this men's program. So I agree. I do think it's the X factor. Now's the time to go out there and deliver, Jimmy.
Look, I agree with you, and see with the players as well. When you're at this level, you welcome pressure and you thrive under pressure. That's why you play. You play your domestic football, you have pressure week in and week out. International football, you have pressure week in and week out. These guys will be up for it. This is going to be a fantastic game for this national team. These players will be up for it. They don't need Jesse Marsch to boost their egos and get them going for this game. They don't need anybody. These players will be up for it themselves. And I can only say from past experience as a player, and Amy, you can probably speak to this as well. These big matches are what you thrive for. You absolutely enjoy every single minute of these matches. And it's going to be no different for this national team. Playing in round of 32, an opportunity to get into the round of 16, playing against South Africa, these players must be going absolutely nuts, just chomping at the bits to get onto this pitch right now and get this game going, because I know myself, I would. What do you think, Dubs?
Yeah, I agree. I think they're also put in a situation here, as KJ alluded to, a gift and an opponent where you don't want to underestimate them, but at the same time, you see your path clearly to history, to winning a knockout round, to making it to the round of 16. So it's reconciling a little bit where this team has come from in their history, like chip on their shoulder, underdogs, to now needing to fully embrace the fact that they are favorites and coping and embracing the pressure that comes with that. And then the delicate balance between realizing they have been at their best in this tournament when they are chasing something. Chasing the equalizer versus Bosnia, looking to step on the throats of the opponent in Qatar, put them away very, very early. And then the last 20 minutes where they finally showed some urgency versus Switzerland, where it looked like a tie was within reach. So can they go out and can they do that versus South Africa and kill the game very quickly?
So the captain, check. The pressure, check. The commitment, check. But the opportunity, Jesse Marsch spoke about that as well.
In all these moments, as a competitor, whether you're a player or coach, you never allow negativity. You visualize positivity, right? You visualize what you want the game to look like, how you're going to insert yourself, how you're going to respond to difficulty. And, these guys, when you do this for a living, obviously World Cup knockout stages and the fact that we haven't been there, it means that our team hasn't been in this situation before, but we've been in similar situations. And you could ask Alphonso about playing in Champions League finals, right? And you could say that actually the attention and the scrutiny and everything for something like that, or scoring a goal in the semifinal, whatever, is bigger and more ominous than what we're going through tomorrow. But I think in general, what we've tried to do is create an infrastructure around how we play, who we are, an understanding of roles, and then use that for each other, for them to empower each other to go out and be their best. We're gonna experience difficulty in the match. We're going to experience success. We're going to have challenges, and the key is that we're ready to rise to all those challenges and be at our best. And for me, when you do this for a living, I live for these moments. I'm sure Alphonso would tell you the same. You live for the moments where you're tested and you can show how good you are. And I think our team is ready for that.
We often turn to KJ when we need a succinct piece of analysis or reflections on the journey of football. 86, St. John's, Qatar, 8-1. This moment, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And KJ, every time they win, should they continue to do so? I'm going to ask you this question because they're always on the precipice of the best thing this men's program has ever done. Can you summarize for us what is at stake for men's football in Canada tomorrow with this match?
It really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this team and for the men's program in this, home World Cup. And no longer a home World Cup for them. We are in the United States, but it's felt like home here sometimes for them. I've spoken to many Canadian fans, some of the Voyagers who got in their cars and drove from Vancouver and are making that journey right now to get to California because of the flights were so extortionate. The prices of the tickets started going down and the flights went up. I'm speaking to many people who are flying to different cities and driving hours to get there, to be there, because they believe in the history that's going to be made here in this game at SoFi Stadium on Sunday. And when Canada Soccer have often been on the brink, particularly this men's team, even under Jesse Marsh and particularly under John Herman in the past, when they've been on the brink of stepping into the unknown and making history, far too often it's gone wrong. It doesn't feel like that anymore. If it does, then obviously it'll be an unbelievable major disappointment. I just feel that there's an opportunity there that they're never, ever going to get back again. And of course, if they get that, then there'll be another opportunity making the last 16 of a FIFA Men's World Cup. So, look, it's going to be special. It's going to be very unique. And it's now time for the best team that this country has ever created to get as far as they can and make the last 16 of the World Cup, Adam.
Christian Jack joining us from Manhattan Beach, California, night before Canada's biggest ever match on the men's side. KJ will be in the building tomorrow. We'll check in with them, hopefully not for the last time, to preview a Canadian match. KJ, thanks for joining us.